welcome to the cake tip. Today we're going to be making this super soft lemon and coconut tray bake. To begin with, you're going to need to grease and line a 20 by 30 centimetre tin. It doesn't have to be exact measurements, and when you pop your parchment paper, baking paper in the tray, it doesn't need to be super neat. This is only a tray bake that we're making and it's all about the flavour. So let's get started. The first lot of ingredients you're going to need for this bake is some dairy-free spread or butter, and this needs to be at room temperature so that it can actually combine properly. The next thing you're going to need is some stevia and some xylitol. Now, if you don't have any xylitol, then you can use caster sugar, but it does mean that this mix won't actually be completely sugar-free. The stevia we only use a small amount of because of the flavouring that it can cause if you use too much of it within your cake. So the combination of xylitol and stevia makes it completely sugar-free. You're now going to grab yourself a bowl. Now, if you're using a standalone mixer, that's fine. If you want to do it by hand, that's perfectly fine as well. You can also choose to use a handheld whisk if you choose to make your job a little bit easier. Okay, for the first ingredients we're going to put into the bowl is we're going to add our stevia and then our xylitol. I will put the list of all the ingredients and the measurements in the video, in the description underneath the video also, so you'll have them all there. And now we're putting our dairy-free spread in. Make sure we get all of that there. Probably should have used a slightly larger bowl for that. Once it's all in, then you're going to place it into your standalone mixer and you're going to mix it until it fully comes together and it's fully combined. If you're doing this by hand, it doesn't matter if it takes a long time. You need to make sure that everything is well combined and soft. So when you've finished, it should look like this. So as you can see, it's come together and it's a little bit fluffy. It won't be as fluffy as normal butter because it's dairy free, so it doesn't come together in exactly the same way. But don't panic, if it's all combined, that's fine. Now we're going to add our eggs. Now there's 8 eggs in this, which seems like a lot, but it's because it's gluten-free flour, and we will be adding these one at a time. So if you're doing it by hand, one at a time. If you're doing it in a standalone mixer, have it running and do one at a time. Really important. Once you've added all of your eggs, it will look like this. Now it may look a little bit like scrambled egg. Don't panic. This is because you're using alternative ingredients. You're using xylitol, stevia and dairy-free products at the same time, so the egg doesn't combine in the same way. But I promise your end result will be super fluffy, light and really yummy. So now we need to move on to the next stage, which is to add our gluten-free flour and our coconut flour. Now our coconut flour, there's a quite large amount of that in there, which does actually reduce the carbs in this as well. So it's sugar-free and reduced carbs. Now we add our gluten-free flour. Now this is gluten-free self-raising flour, so it doesn't need any raising agent added to this tray bake to give it a good rise. And then we're also going to add our lemon zest. And we will also be adding some lemon juice, but not the full amount of the lemon juice at the start. That will be then added once the cake is baked. So you're going to be using the juice of 2 lemons. When you're adding your juice to the mix, you'll only be using half of it. So you need to try and judge exactly that half mark. If you prefer to have it slightly more lemony, this lemon tray bake, then what you can do is you can use all of your 2 lemon juices in the mix, and then you can juice 1 more lemon for when you're doing your topping of the cake if you prefer to. Once you've poured your lemon juice into the mix, it's then time to add it to your standalone mixer and mix until it's fully combined. Or if you're doing this by hand, until it's come together. As you can see here, it's quite thick because of the coconut flour, but it is absolutely beautifully smelling. And as you can see, it's got nice little air pockets in it as well, which will help when it's baking and help it to rise. Okay, so you need to grab a hold of your tin that you've already prepared, and we're going to pop our mix into the tin. Now, because this is quite a thick mix, you are going to have to spread this afterwards. So take all of your ingredients out, plop it into the center of the tin, and then afterwards scrape it to the edges of the tin. Just using a spatula, you can just push it right to the corners. You need to make sure that it goes fully into the corners, because otherwise you'll end up with your cake rising very much in the centre, and you'll end up with your corners cooking at a different time rate. So it's very important that you make sure that it's right into the corners before you pop it into the oven. Once it's ready to go into the oven, you're going to bake this until it gets to a point where you can touch it and it springs back to the touch, and it's a lovely golden brown colour. Once your tray bake is baked, you're going to remove it from the oven and pop it straight onto a rack. You're not going to take it out before you decorate, you're going to decorate in the tin. So you need to take a handful of shredded coconut, unsweetened shredded coconut, and you're going to pop this on your cake whilst it's still really hot. This is important to do this straight away and scatter it all over. It's just a handful. This is not a perfect measurement. So if you want more, you can put more on there. It's entirely up to you. Once we have actually scattered all of the shredded coconuts onto the top of the tray bake, we're then going to pour the reserved lemon juice over the top. Now, if you want to have this more lemony, you can put more lemon juice over the top. What happens is whilst the cake is still hot, the lemon juice acts like a little bit of a glue. So this is a little bit like icing it with sugar, but without the sugar. So when you're pouring over your lemon juice, you need to try and make sure that you go right over where all the coconut parts are. So if you've got a clump of coconut, pour it over the top of there, because this will help it to stick to the cake. It also helps to enhance the lemon flavouring within the cake as well. Once you've poured over all of your lemon juice onto the top of your cake, you're actually going to leave this to cool in the tin for probably about half an hour to 45 minutes, because you're going to need to be able to take the whole thing out of the tray with the parchment paper at the same time. So when it's cooled to a degree that you're happy with and you think it's easy enough to handle, just put your wire rack next to it, and you're literally going to pick up either side of your parchment paper and place it straight across. Don't worry if your parchment paper is still underneath it, it will still cool down at a fine rate. Just peel it away slightly and allow it to cool completely before you cut it up into slices and squares. This does last for 2 to 3 days in an airtight container. Thanks for watching this video, and please remember to subscribe for all future videos of gluten-free, dairy-free, keto, vegan and more.